Leftist insanity in America erupts as Trump prepares to unleash August Armageddon. By Sorcha Faal, July 2, 2017. What does it mean.com. An intriguing MOFA report circulating in the Kremlin today states that American leftist communistic forces and their mainstream propaganda fake news media sycophant allies who are attempting to launch a coup d'etat against President Donald Trump have now fallen into the abyss of insanity, with their realizing that they are now facing an August Armageddon that will forever shatter their decades-long dream of being able to exert total control over the peoples of that nation. According to this report, in a clear case of ignoring the old adage that sometimes your neighbor's history warns you which path never to follow, American leftist communistic forces have attempted to force upon the people of the United States a nationalized healthcare system, just like the Soviet communists did in Russia beginning in 1917, when they destroyed the existing healthcare structure in Imperial Russia that worked for everyone and replaced it with a nationalized system that failed everybody. Like the Soviet communists before them, these American leftist communistic forces have tried for decades to create in the United States what is called a single-payer system for healthcare. That is a healthcare system in which the government, financed by taxes, covers basic healthcare costs for all citizens regardless of income, occupation, or health status. The only two nations in the world where a single-payer system is in operation are Canada and Taiwan, but with the father of the Canadian healthcare system having to admit its complete failure, and likewise Taiwan's healthcare system being on the verge of collapse. Like nearly all modern industrial technological nations, though, the United States operates its healthcare system on what is called the hybrid single-payer system, that according to 2015 statistics shows 49% of their citizens receiving healthcare from employer-based private insurance policies, 7% receiving healthcare from private insurance policies not employer-related, 34% receiving healthcare from U.S. government single-payer programs, and 9% being uninsured. Of the 34% of Americans receiving U.S. government single-payer health care, 20% receive health care from a program named Medicaid, while the other 14% receive their health care through Medicare. Medicare is a single-payer national social insurance program administered by the U.S. government since 1966 that currently uses about 30 to 50 private insurance companies across the United States to provide health care insurance for Americans aged 65 and older who have worked and paid into the system through the payroll tax, and it also provides health insurance to younger people with some disabilities as determined by the U.S. Social Security Administration, as well as people with end-stage renal disease and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Medicaid, though, is a U.S. social health care program for families and individuals with limited resources, described as a government insurance program for persons of all ages whose income and resources are insufficient to pay for health care, and is the largest source of funding for medical and health-related services for people with low income in the United States, is a means-tested, and is jointly funded by the individual U.S. states and federal government, but managed by these states. In their all-out assault upon the entire U.S. healthcare system in order to establish their decades-long dream of creating nationwide single-payer system, the Obama regime and its leftist communistic allies, with complete support from the mainstream propaganda fake news media, jammed through the American Congress a new law effective 23 March 2010 called the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, whose stated purpose was to ensure those who weren't able to find insurance on their own, but whose main and devious true motive was to explode the ranks of Medicaid recipients. Such a complete and utter failure has the Obamacare law been, in fact, that of America's nearly 326.5 million citizens, only 12.2 million Americans were able to enroll in it for 2017, and of those, barely 10.3 million were able to afford it and ended up paying their Obamacare premiums. But to the true motive of Obamacare in exploding the ranks of Medicaid in order to connive their single-payer albatross around the necks of all the American people, it has also completely and utterly failed, as only 19 U.S. states fell for this charade, with the worst example being the leftist communistic utopia state of Illinois, who has just fallen into the financial abyss after a U.S. federal court ordered them last week to start paying the billions of dollars it owes to doctors and hospitals, thus causing that state's finances to go from horrific to catastrophic. Even more astounding about these American leftist communists in regards to their Obamacare worship are the stunning facts proving that even with this law, the U.S. spends more on healthcare as a percentage of GDP than any other advanced country in the world, yet has worse health outcomes, with lower life expectancy, higher infant mortality, and higher obesity rates than comparable countries like Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and Japan. And unlike just one of these nations, the United Kingdom, this report does further note, there is no way possible the American people would accept paying a whopping 20% of their entire income to fulfill the leftist communist dream of nationalized health care, which is a full 15% more than America's middle-class tax rate and would entail a 20% tax hike for 45% of Americans who pay nothing now. Thus meaning that one cannot comprehend how nearly half of the U.S. population living in poverty and barely making it, and then saddled with a 20% tax bill, would embrace being poorer to have basic health care when they will be unable to eat or pay rent. Equally as worse for these American leftist communists trying to foist their entire Obamacare agenda upon an unsuspecting U.S. populace is that the entire United States governmental structure is virulently opposed to national health care, and why that nation will never see it implemented, and as painstakingly detailed by Duke University economists, scientists, and experts in their report titled, "It's the Institutions, Stupid, Why Comprehensive National Health Insurance Always Fails in America." But to the greatest fear of these American leftist communists and their mainstream propaganda fake news media allies is that one single person has within his power, to destroy all of their national health care dreams forever, and whose name is President Donald Trump. Unbeknownst to the vast majority of the American people, when the Obamacare law was passed, it contained a critical and fatal flaw. The U.S. Congress had not approved how to pay for it, with the U.S. mainstream propaganda fake news media hiding this fact from the American people. The Obama regime was allowed to steal billions of dollars to pay for their failed Obamacare law, but who were then quickly countered when, for the first time in U.S. history, that either the U.S. House or U.S. Senate, as an institution, brought a lawsuit against a president over enforcement of the law, and as detailed in the monumental constitutional lawsuit titled United States House of Representatives versus Price. As the U.S. House of Representatives is the only branch of the American government allowed to authorize the payment of taxpayer money, the U.S. federal court rapidly ruled that since they had not authorized payments to insurance companies, the Obamacare law was, in effect, dead. Knowing, however, that the executive branch of the U.S. government was about to change hands, the U.S. federal court stayed their ruling that would have destroyed the Obamacare law, choosing instead to allow the new Trump administration to decide what to do, and that President Trump on 22 May agreed to let stand for 90 more days. As to what President Trump intends to do when this agreement expires in August, he has made no secret about, as he fully intends to explode Obamacare entirely, and stated that his new healthcare bill was the only way to save anything, and warned his leftist communist adversaries that, quote, "This bill only gives them 1 month, they don't realize that." In facing President Trump's August Armageddon that will forever and completely destroy Obamacare, his leftist communist enemies, instead of working with their new leader to craft a workable healthcare law, have instead gone totally insane, and as evidenced by their leftist coup d'etat gambit of trying to get Trump declared insane. And as always, too, even when facing the violent rhetoric and antics of his leftist communist opponents and their mainstream propaganda fake news media allies, President Trump remains unfazed, and as evidenced by his last evening addressing tens of thousands of his supporters and simply stating, quote, "The fake media tried to stop us, but I'm president, and they're not."